Hey guys, it's been a while. I've been doing some pretty big changes in my life, including moving to glorious Portland, Oregon. And it's really taken a lot of time out of my schedule. So I wanted to leave you with this tasty nugget that I recorded while I was in Vienna for jQuery Europe. It was an excellent conference, and while I was there, I had the chance to talk with Janina Woods, who is a friend of mine who has a 3D game development company called Ateo in Zurich. So following is a little interview that we recorded. You enjoy. I'm going to head off to speak in Denmark and give some workshops, and maybe I'll see you at Future of Web Design in London in April. Bye!
So much cake.
I feel like we're at the crazy tea party in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, totally.
Here we go.
Hello, I am Janina Woods, and I'm a game developer.
And I'm Rachel Nabors, and I get to interview you. So, I just did jQuery conference. I'm just going to give the audience some background. I just did jQuery conference Europe in Vienna, and one of the presents that I gave the speakers were these delicious little chocolate cakes. And what are they called again?
Sacher cake.
Sacher cake. I'm still getting my pronunciation down. I'm not the greatest, but it's really tasty, and I'm sharing mine with my friend Janina because our birthdays are in March, and we'd have a little birthday party here. You get to join us! Yay! So it's really tasty and delicious. Janina, I met her at Front End Conference Zurich, and she gave a great talk about the Oculus Rift. She's a 3D game developer, and I thought I'd bring her in while we're here in Vienna together, celebrating her birthday, to talk about 3D game development and how it relates to everything. So, Janina, tell us more about what you do.
Well, I am a game developer in the largest sense. So I do everything related to games, gamification, everything you can play.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't exclude like board games or any kind of thing. So anything you can design rules for and can play, I will design if you give me the chance.
Interesting. Sort of like how I will do anything that requires a story. You'll do anything that has a gameplay component. Fascinating. So what sort of platforms do you work with? You mentioned Unity in conversation yesterday. I hear a lot about Unity from the JavaScript crowd. What is that? Can you tell us more about it?
Unity is a 3D game engine, now also a 2D game engine where you can do like 2D platforming games and jump and runs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really cool platform because you can develop the core game once and then build it or release it for many different platforms with just little changes for the input and the interface. For example, you can release it on PC, on Mac, on iOS devices, on Android for web, even PS3 and the Wii, everything.
That sounds really exciting. I will have to check that out. What else do you use?
Right now, we're using some hardware like the Oculus Rift. We made a game for the Oculus Rift recently, a horror game, and are now developing a full version of our game Shiny, which was a finalist in the VR Jam, like in the Oculus Game Jam competition.
Whoa, that's pretty impressive. A finalist. Didn't you just win a competition as well?
Yes, at the ETH Zurich. 2 weeks ago there was a competition for an Augmented Reality Games hackathon.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my team partner, we won the competition by building a stacking game in Augmented Reality where you can build a tower really high of different kind of blocks.
And didn't you mentioned, I think, that you spent an extra amount of time making sure it was playable. Right. You had to make some hard choices because you had a deadline. What kind of choices did you have to make?
Well, normally game jams are always timed. So you have a certain amount of time to make a game that reaches from 1 month to like 4 hours. And our hackathon was 10 hours. And because we participated in a lot of game jams before, we knew that it was really hard to make something playable. You can easily develop a concept that is cool and looks cool, but it's almost never playable. So we decided to quickly decide on a concept and then just work on it for 5 or 6 hours, and then really put the rest of the time into making it usable, playable, so that not only we can play it, we know how it works, but also all other people can play it.
That sounds awesome. And a good call, too. Your focus on actually making it usable and playable sounds like it won the competition.
Yes, indeed. There was another team that did a similar idea to us, but they only concentrated on the gameplay and tried to put more and more features into it, and we just took the one feature and tried to make it as good as possible.
Well done. I want to toast you with tea to that.
Cheers.
So we talked about Unity, and I imagine Janina uses a number of other technologies. The Oculus Rift is a piece of hardware, and it straps onto the face. I'll probably stick a picture of it on here or something so that everybody can see what it is. But what other kinds of hardware do you use?
Hardware, not so much. We concentrate on using different kinds of plugins, software for Unity, so we're more or less Unity specialists and try to pick up everything you can do with that engine. For example, the Augmented Reality technique, which works on mobile devices, of course, and also on webcams, everything that has a camera. And there's a lot of cool stuff, cool hardware coming out soon for exclusive development for Unity. For example, real augmented reality glasses that you imagined Google Glasses to be, but they're not. And those are really full screen augmented with development only for Unity. And we try to just get our heads into everything that's Unity and
More cake?
More cake. Yeah, later. There's a lot of cake.
I know.
It looks small.
You think?
But it is a lot.
All right. So do you just work with Unity, or do you work with anything else? You mentioned Kinect. Do you have to use different libraries with that, or does Unity work with that out of the box?
It doesn't work with it out of the box. There is an official Microsoft plugin, but there's also some third-party ones that work much, much better. I don't know why that is. You'd imagine Microsoft to be the best one because they developed the Kinect, but it isn't. So yes, I work with Kinect in Unity. You can configure everything there, the drivers in there, so that works pretty well. But the only Kinect that works with Unity is the very first one, because it has a separate power adapter, and you need that. You can't power the Kinect via your PC just via USB when you use it with Unity. And the resolution is just so bad. You need to compensate for everything in your code, because if you would just translate the movement, it would do something like this, all the time, even if you hold your hand still, because the resolution is so bad. It has so big pixels.
Yeah.
That it kind of jumps back before all the pixels, back and forth. And you need to compensate for everything in your code, smooth everything, calculate everything, and it's not a fun thing to do. It is fun when it works, but it is just a crappy piece of hardware.
Also, dear listeners, we're sorry about this construction noise you may be hearing. We got a really good deal on booking for this place, and I think they put us on an unfinished level. It's kind of creepy walking down the halls because there's construction equipment, and I feel like zombies are gonna jump out and have a boss fight with us at any moment. But luckily, we're only here for a few nights. Oh, so have you done 3D game design for the web?
I am in a project right now that will start in a few months, which is related to language learning, and it will also have a web component where you can play on the web in kind of like an multiplayer online game kind of way to practice languages.
Could you tell us the difference between something like augmented reality and using the Oculus Rift or 3D game development?
Well, it is, for developing, it is all pretty much the same on my side. It's just the way the user gets to interact with it.
Okay.
So 3D game development is really anything that involves any kind of 3D. So, for example, everything you can play right now, the normal shooters, online multiplayer games, everything is 3D game development.
Mm.
And then augmented reality, which is on your mobile phone, and virtual reality, which is on the Oculus Rift, are two totally different things.
Okay, so the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality.
Yeah. So augmented reality is, like the word says, an augmented version of your own reality. So you put an additional layer of interaction and content on your world. You don't look at a screen and see nothing of your world, but you see your own reality with additional features.
So like a name tag floating next to a person's face.
Yeah, that can be like descriptions, or these apps that show you where the nearest bus station is by pointing them in a direction. Or just having a little figure dancing on your table. Or like we did the stacking game, where the blocks are not on the table, but you can stack them as if they were on the table. So everything that enhances your reality.
It sounds like augmented reality is pretty visually based right now. Have you ever heard of people making augmented reality games that use things like audio?
Not yet, no. But, well, there are some kinds of augmented reality games that have been around for a while. It's the urban games. It's in the times where you didn't have the computing power on your phones to display 3D stuff in real time and everything. These urban games use text and audio to make the players be able to play together in the urban setting, like chasing each other or finding each other. For example, they play that there's one bad guy and several policemen. They try to catch him, and they have headphones, and every time they get near each other, they get like signals, like a ping on the mini-map, but they get it, to hear it, so they know, oh, he is somewhere within 200 meters of me. So there are these kind of games, but they're not really well spread.
I see. That's interesting. So, you've described augmented reality. What about virtual reality on the Oculus Rift and other such devices?
Well, virtual reality is basically substituting your own reality with a different one.
Reality's pretty rich. There's a lot of sensorial input. Is that a problem when you're developing for virtual reality?
Not well. It could be a problem in the future, but I don't think right now, because the whole hardware, the whole virtual reality experience with the Oculus Rift is so new that only by getting visual input, like really looking around in this world and feeling in this world by just turning your head or putting it sideways, what was never possible on the monitor, you're already so in there because you didn't expect it, that it doesn't really matter if you hear something different or feel something different. The only thing that cares about that is your body, because if you do movements or positions in the virtual world that your eyes see, but your body doesn't experience, you get really sick. But it doesn't influence your immersion into the gameplay, at least right now. Maybe later you will have like tactile cloth that give you the feedback feeling or something like that. I can imagine that to happen soon.
Yes, and I heard that Disney scientists have discovered a way to manipulate by blowing air onto, say, your hand, making you feel like you're touching a solid substance. That's interesting. I've heard about people getting sick with the Oculus Rift. Sometimes I wonder if maybe we should just bypass the hardware and just wire things directly into people's brains.
Well,
Maybe not right now.
well, that would take care of a lot of problems, definitely. But you can just design games to not make you sick. If you know what it is that makes people sick while playing, you can bypass that by using a lot of techniques. And for example, our finalist games, one of the reasons it won, came into the finalists, we didn't win in the end. But I got a t-shirt out of it, so...
T-shirts are nice.
One of the reasons it won was that, well, it didn't make people sick. We built the interface, the control mechanism, the way the player moves, the way all the objects look, especially with not making people sick in mind. And it is now one of the only games in the store that has almost perfect virtual reality sickness rating.
So there's a virtual reality sickness rating in the Oculus Rift store?
Yeah, well, they have the share store where you can download games and demos, and there's two kinds of ratings, like virtual reality experience and virtual reality comfort. Because some of those are really, really nice to look at, but the frame rate and the way you move really fast and the way, even if your character is like sitting inclined in a chair in the game and you sit upright and then you move, it just makes you feel totally dizzy because you see your legs there, but your legs aren't there. So yeah, there is like a comfort or sickness rating.
Whoa. I can't imagine what it would be like to make a game that makes people sick, but I know it's happened in the past. I've heard a number of grandparents complain that they can't stand those video games because it moves too fast.
Well,
so I wonder if people will find themselves adjusting to these things over time.
I think so, yes. There are, of course, some games that are really, really badly designed that make you sick all the time, but you get used to the Oculus. It takes a few days, and you definitely shouldn't drink and then do Oculus because then you get really sick.
You hear that, guys? No drinking virtual reality parties.
Well, after using virtual reality, if you feel really sick and then have a drink, I find that helps a lot.
So you should drink after playing virtual reality, just not
reality.
during, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's cool. We could do that.
Yeah.
That is not a sex toy. That's the guys with the auger over there doing something. We assure you. One other thing I was thinking about, you gave that talk in Zurich, and you specifically were talking about the future of user interfaces in these 3D virtual environments. And I mean, your talk I thought was applicable not only to virtual reality, but also to augmented reality.
Yes, yes.
I was wondering, could you tell us a little about some of the challenges you faced and overcome with these interfaces?
With the Oculus, for example, yes. Well, of course, if you try to design a game, you will do it like you've always done. We started developing the game without having the hardware yet, because they took a long time to deliver those. And so we started developing the core game with like a menu and everything like 3 months before we got the Oculus. And then when we tried the Oculus, it was like, it just didn't work. We didn't think of so much that just was really in your face when you used it for the first time. For example, having a traditional static interface that is on your screen is no problem at all with normal apps because the screen is always there and you adjust the screen, you don't adjust your head. So if you have this kind of static interface on the Oculus, which is always in your face, it kind of feels like someone is dangling like a piece of paper in front of your head, and it won't go away no matter where you look. And and even if it's just like a frame or something, it feels so unnatural and so, well, it just doesn't feel right, and it makes you sick almost instantly because you try to get rid of it and it just doesn't go away.
So what do you do instead?
We try to go the augmented reality approach, where you label something. So you place the interface into the world as if it was a physical object. It is, of course, not a physical object. It still looks like a menu. It still has buttons. But you can adjust your view angle depending on where you look on the interface. I mean, if you read something on the wall, it doesn't matter if you're directly in front of it or at an angle or anywhere. You can just read it. And we try to go the same approach with the Oculus interface. So you don't feel sick no matter where you look. You can look up and the menu is gone. Because if you would look at a wall and then look at the ceiling, the menu would also be gone. So it just feels natural. And so we, of course, you have a very small portion of the screen where you can just see very clearly on the Oculus. And if you would have a screen-filling menu, it would just blur on the edges. So you need to be able to adjust your view field on your own to be able to read everything. You can have a menu that starts like way below the screen and goes up or left and right, like all the options everywhere, and you can just look at them and choose them. And that feels so natural because moving your head to look at something is so natural. It just, you don't even realize you're in a menu. You don't even realize you're in this virtual reality because it just feels right to look at it this way.
That's really interesting. I mean, especially I feel like with game design and web design these days, we've gotten so used to having like the static nav bar and it's always there. And you're saying that it just doesn't work in augmented reality or virtual reality to have this always in your face menu option.
Mm-hmm.
I heard either at your talk or some talk recently that there was one really good interface where you would look down and a map, like an actual physical map, would pop up, and that was your user interface. And then you would look away quickly and it would go back down. And it seemed really interesting and intuitive. And I wonder if we won't see things like this slowly percolating back into other forms of digital design once and if these types of interfaces become more popular as gaming rises.
Well, the interfaces have become a lot more intuitive in recent years, but it's still a different way of looking at them than in virtual reality, because virtual reality is, of course, a game. It is designed, it has interface, but it is really you should treat it, at least in my opinion, as reality. You should treat it as being the real world, as if looking at stuff at the real world, just with enhanced features. Like, I can look at the cup and I see a label that says Darjeeling tea, which was delicious, by the way. Or I can look at the cake and it tells me the ingredients. It's like an enhanced form of reality. And I don't treat it like any kind of screen design at all. I don't know if that's the right approach. It's for me the one that works the best, the most intuitive.
I would say that defines the right approach. So that's been really exciting to hear about. Thank you so much for talking with us. Before we wrap this up, because apparently the construction workers are trying to drive us out with their drills.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that pleasant. I would love to know, what is the name of your company?
The name of my company is Ateo.
Ateo.
It is ATEO.
ATEO.
Yes. If you Google it...
I'll put up a link.
Well, if you do Google it, we realize it means atheism in Spanish or Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know that before, but I guess we can do business now with very faithful Spanish customers. But that's okay. We're in Switzerland anyway, so...
All right.
But it shows up on Google on the first page. So,
what are your plans at Ateo? What does the future hold for you?
We talked about that a lot in the recent months. So right now we're just trying to keep afloat because we're a newly founded company and we're trying to get a lot of customer relations and projects to just build up a portfolio, to get a name, and so on. Luckily, we're one of the only 2 people offering augmented reality apps and games in Switzerland, so at least we're good there. And we're the only one offering any kind of virtual reality experience. There are a lot of guys having Oculus, but I don't offer anything. So at least we're positioned there pretty good, and we're working towards an own product. Right now we're trying to analyze what kind of projects we get, where's the need. Then if we see something that could really work out, we're trying to make it into some of our own product to be able to sell it. But right now, we're just trying to get by.
It sounds like you're making great progress. It's bleeding edge, and anytime you're in a new market, things are going to be rough and tumble, but it sounds like you're sticking it out, learning a lot, and doing some great things. Janina, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Good luck.
Thank you. Every time I go to Vienna, I'm either sick or I get sick.
I have the same problem with Portland. I'm waiting to get sick. I probably will get sick by the way back, but don't worry. I've been around so many sick people on this trip. Like the flight over here, everyone was just the entire night. It was just this little organ music of sniffing throughout the airplane. If I get sick, it won't be your fault. It will be dozens of people's fault.
Okay. All right.
You can all share the blame, like a firing squad of disease.